I'm Mackenzie Wilson, 27 years old, and I still remember the exact moment my phone lit up with those words from my father. Don't contact us. Don't come around. You're on your own now. My hands trembled as I read the message that would shatter my world. All because I refused to invest my grandmother's inheritance in his failing business. Years of tension had finally snapped, but nothing prepared me for being cut off completely. Then my sister Heather did something that changed everything. Before I tell you how my sister saved me when everyone else walked away, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and subscribe if family drama stories resonate with you. We all need to know we're not alone when family betrays us. Growing up in suburban Boston, our family projected the perfect upper-middle-class image. Four-bedroom colonial house, manicured lawn, two luxury cars in the driveway. My father, Richard Wilson, built his real estate business from the ground up and never let anyone forget it. Nobody handed me anything. He'd repeat at family dinners, ignoring the $50,000 loan from his own father that started it all. My mother Diana played her role perfectly, elegant, supportive, and never contradicting my father in public. At home, she'd sometimes whisper, "Just do what your father wants, Mackenzie. It's easier that way." I learned early that peace in our house meant following his rules. Heather, my younger sister by 2 years, was my sanctuary. Late nights hiding under blankets with flashlights, sharing secrets and dreams. We'll always have each other's backs, we promised, linking pinky fingers in solemn vows that felt unbreakable. Education was non-negotiable in our house, but with conditions. Business, law, or medicine, my father would say. Anything else is a hobby, not a career. When I announced my plan to study performing arts, the first real fracture appeared. "Absolutely not," he declared over Sunday dinner. "I won't waste money on a degree that leads nowhere." "It's not a waste if it's what I love," I countered, feeling my heart race with unusual defiance. "Love doesn't pay bills, Mackenzie." I applied anyway, securing a partial scholarship that, combined with student loans, made it possible without his support. The night I told him, he didn't speak to me for a week. My mother slipped me $200 when he wasn't looking. "Just be practical about it," she whispered. For years later, I graduated and landed a job as a marketing coordinator at a small but respected theater company. My salary was modest, but I found a tiny apartment I could just afford. That one-bedroom walk-up with the creaky floors became my haven, the first space that was truly mine. I decorated with second-hand furniture and colorful thrift store finds. The place was cramped but cozy. Every piece represented independence, small victories against my father's predictions of failure. When Heather first visited, she spun around my living room and declared, "This is so you, Mac. I'm proud of you." Those words meant everything, especially since communication with my parents had dwindled to obligatory Sunday dinners and holiday appearances. Dad had resigned himself to my career choice, but never missed an opportunity to mention friends' children who were already making six figures in more practical fields. Then my grandmother passed away. My mother's mother, she had always been my champion, slipping me art books and theater tickets when my father wasn't looking. "Follow your passion, little bird," she'd whisper. "Life's too short for anything else." The inheritance came as a complete shock, $75,000, split between Heather and me. My grandmother's note said simply, "To help you build the life you want, not the one others expect." The money represented freedom, graduate school without crushing debt, maybe even a few months in London studying experimental theater. The possibilities made me dizzy with hope. Until my father called a family meeting. "My development project in Cambridge needs additional investors," he announced over dinner at my parents' house. "This is perfect timing with your grandmother's money. 15% return, minimum." I pushed my food around my plate. I was thinking of using it for graduate school, actually. His fork clattered against his plate. "More education in a field with no future? That's wasteful, Mackenzie." "It's my inheritance," I said quietly. "Grandma wanted me to use it for my dreams." "Your grandmother didn't understand business," he dismissed. "This investment is the smart move. I've already spoken to my lawyer about drawing up the paperwork." I felt my chest tighten. "You did what?" Without even asking me first. Mother jumped in, her voice soothing but firm. Your father knows what's best, dear. This is a family opportunity. Heather already agreed to invest her portion, my father added, looking smug. I glanced at my sister, who wouldn't meet my eyes. Later, she cornered me in the kitchen. I didn't actually agree yet, she whispered. But you know how Dad gets. I'm still thinking about it. Over the next 3 weeks, the pressure intensified. Daily calls from my father with updated projections. My mother sending articles about failed artists. Even extended family members suddenly interested in my financial decisions. I researched the Cambridge project on my own and discovered it was behind schedule and over budget. When I mentioned these concerns to my father, he exploded. You don't trust me? After everything I've done for this family? This project will secure all our futures. Despite mounting pressure, something within me remained firm. This money represented my only chance at the future I'd worked for. Every night, I'd look around my small apartment and remind myself that I'd built this life despite my father's disapproval. I could keep building. Still, I waffled. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe family loyalty should come first. The night before meeting my father, I called Heather in tears. What should I do? I asked. She sighed heavily. I don't know, Mac. Dad's been impossible to live with since you've been hesitating. But it's your money. Your choice. Those words, your choice, echoed as I met my father at his favorite coffee shop the next morning. The coffee shop was busy that Tuesday morning, filled with the hum of conversations and the hiss of espresso machines. I arrived early, ordering my usual latte and claiming a corner table where I nervously arranged and rearranged the sugar packets. My father arrived precisely on time, immaculate in his tailored suit, ordering black coffee before sitting across from me. He placed a folder of documents between us. I've outlined the investment structure here, he said, pushing the folder toward me without pleasantries. You'll need to transfer the funds by Friday for the first phase. I took a deep breath, my hand resting on the closed folder. Dad, I've given this a lot of thought. He nodded approvingly. Smart girl. I know you'd see this opportunity clearly. That's not what I mean, I said, my voice quivering slightly. I've decided not to invest in the Cambridge project. His expression froze. Excuse me. I'm going to use the money for graduate school, like I planned. It's what Grandma would have wanted. What your grandmother would have wanted, he repeated flatly, is for you to be financially secure. Not throwing away money on another useless degree. It's not useless to me, I insisted, my resolve strengthening. This is my decision. My inheritance. His face hardened as he stood abruptly. You're making a mistake you'll regret, he said, voice dangerously low. Don't come crying to me when you're drowning in more debt with no prospects. He left without touching his coffee, leaving the folder on the table. I sat there for nearly an hour afterward, shaking but somehow relieved. I had finally stood my ground. That evening, as I was heating leftover pasta for dinner, my phone chimed with a text. From my father. Your decision today proves you care nothing for this family. Don't contact us. Don't come around. You're on your own now. We've supported your foolish choices long enough. You're cut from the will and family business. Hope your dreams keep you warm at night. I dropped my phone as if it had burned me. Surely this was just anger speaking. He couldn't mean it. I tried calling immediately, straight to voicemail. I called my mother, no answer. I texted Heather. Did you see what Dad sent me? Her reply was brief. He's really angry, Mac. Give him time to cool down. 20 minutes later, my mother called. I answered on the first ring. Mom, please. How could you do this to your father? Her voice was tight with controlled fury. After everything he's done for you, the business would have secured your future. Mom, it's my inheritance. My choice. Wrong choice, she snapped. You've always been selfish, Mackenzie. I thought you'd finally grow up, but clearly I was wrong. Selfish? For not wanting to sink my only savings into Dad's project? He has other investors. He needed family he could trust. The project is having difficulties. Your investment would have shown other investors the family stands behind it. The truth clicked into place. Wait, he's using us to convince other investors to stay in? Is the project failing? Silence. Then you should have known better. Family comes first. Apparently not, since he's cutting me off for making my own financial decision. You made your choice. Now live with it. She hung up. I tried calling back repeatedly. Nothing. I sent emails. No response. By midnight, panic had set in. Was this really happening? Over money? Over one decision? I curled up on my bathroom floor, sobbing until no more tears came. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face anyone, couldn't explain that my family had discarded me overnight. I scrolled through family photos on my phone. Last Christmas. My birthday dinner. Normal, smiling faces. Had it all been conditional? Love offered only while I complied? I tried calling my grandmother's old number, forgetting momentarily she was gone. When the disconnected message played, fresh tears came. The one person who would have understood, who would have stood by me regardless, wasn't here anymore. 3 days after the text, I summoned the courage to call my parents' landline during dinner time. My father answered. Wilson Residence. Dad, it's me. Please don't hang up. Silence. Dad, this is crazy. We're family. We can't just cut each other off over one disagreement. This isn't a disagreement. This is disloyalty. Ingratitude. I'm grateful for everything you've done, but clearly not. Your mother and I have discussed this thoroughly. Until you demonstrate that you understand what family loyalty means, you are not welcome here. Goodbye, Mackenzie. The line went dead. I tried reaching out to aunts, uncles, cousins. Most avoided my calls. Those who did answer were uncomfortable, saying things like, it's between you and your parents, or we don't want to get involved. I later learned my father had contacted everyone, painting me as ungrateful and demanding they respect his decision to teach me a lesson. Even longtime family friends grew distant. Amanda, my friend since high school, met me for coffee but seemed distracted. Your mom called my mom, she admitted reluctantly. She said you're going through a phase and need tough love. A phase? I just didn't want to invest in my dad's project. She looked away. Look, I don't want to get in the middle of family stuff. By the end of the week, my support system had crumbled. My tiny apartment, once my pride, now felt like a lonely island. Each night, I'd scroll through old text messages with my parents, wondering how things had disintegrated so quickly. Meanwhile, bills arrived with their usual punctuality. My theater job paid just enough to cover rent and basic expenses, with nothing left for savings. The inheritance sat in my account, technically providing security, but using it now felt tainted, both a victory and a curse. 2 weeks after my father's text, I was falling apart. The initial shock had given way to a grinding, daily ache that made even basic tasks feel impossible. My alarm would ring, and I'd stare at the ceiling for 30 minutes before forcing myself out of bed. At work, I moved through tasks like a ghost. The theater was preparing for the fall season, but deadlines I would normally handle efficiently slipped past unnoticed. Program design sat incomplete on my computer. Emails went unanswered. Mackenzie, can I see you in my office? My boss, Janet, called me in one Thursday afternoon. Her normally friendly face was creased with concern. Is everything all right? The marketing materials for Autumn Sonata were due yesterday, and the graphics for the website aren't ready yet. I'm sorry, I mumbled. I've been distracted. I'll have everything done by tomorrow. That's what you said last week about the grant application, which we had to rush through at the last minute. She sighed, removing her glasses. Look, I like you. You're creative and usually reliable. But if something's going on, you need to handle it or talk to me. One more missed deadline, and we'll have to reconsider your position here. The warning shot panic through my numbness. Losing my job would be catastrophic, especially now. I nodded vigorously. It won't happen again. That night, I forced myself to work until 2 a.m., completing the overdue projects. But the effort left me drained, and I overslept again, arriving late to a morning meeting. My apartment, once meticulously maintained, devolved into chaos. Dishes piled in the sink. Laundry overflowed the hamper. Mail accumulated unopened on the coffee table, including, I later discovered, a notice that my health insurance premium had increased. When I finally opened my bills, the numbers wouldn't compute. My carefully balanced budget had always been tight, but now it seemed impossible. Rent, utilities, student loans, car payment, insurance, groceries. The columns of figures swam before my eyes, refusing to balance. I tried calling Brianna, my closest friend from college, hoping for distraction. "Let's go out Friday," she suggested. "You sound like you need it." The bar was packed, music thumping. Brianna bought the first round of drinks, then introduced me to her coworkers. For an hour, I pretended to be normal, laughing at jokes and making small talk. Then Lauren, one of Brianna's friends, asked an innocent question. "How's your family doing?" "Brianna mentioned your dad's in real estate." The question hit like a physical blow. "There, we're not really speaking right now." An awkward silence fell, quickly filled by Brianna changing the subject. Later, in the bathroom, I overheard Lauren asking her, "What's the deal with your friend?" "Family drama," Brianna replied. "Her parents think she's making bad decisions." "Actually, her mom called me last week asking if I've been encouraging her." "Weird. She seems kinda intense." I left without saying goodbye. The following week, my car's check engine light came on. The mechanic delivered the verdict without sympathy, $800 for a new alternator. "I can't afford that right now," I said, panic rising. "Is there a cheaper fix?" "Not unless you want to be stranded somewhere. Car won't run without it." I put it on my nearly maxed out credit card, then sat in the repair shop parking lot calculating how many more financial hits I could take before complete collapse. The weight loss started gradually, 5 pounds, then 10. Food lost its appeal. Sleep became elusive, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios the moment my head hit the pillow. I'd doze off at 4 a.m., then drag myself through another day on empty. My apartment manager slipped a note under my door. The rent check had bounced due to insufficient funds. I'd forgotten to transfer money from savings after the car repair. $50 return check fee, it noted. Please remit full payment plus fee within 3 days. That night, I stood in my closet, surveying what I could sell. Designer purse from my birthday 2 years ago. The pearl earrings from graduation. And then, my eyes landed on my grandmother's silver bracelet, the one she'd left specifically for me. Delicate silver links with a small sapphire charm that matched my eyes, she'd always said. The pawnshop was fluorescent bright, making everything look harsh and cheap. The man behind the counter barely glanced at the purse or earrings, offering less than half what they were worth. I accepted without negotiation. When I placed my grandmother's bracelet on the counter, my hand trembled. "Nice piece," he commented, examining it under a loupe. "I can give you $200. The bracelet was worth at least $600. "That's all." He shrugged. "Take it or leave it. I've got overhead." I took it, the bills feeling dirty in my hand. In my car afterward, I sobbed until I couldn't breathe, apologizing aloud to my grandmother for losing her last gift to me. I'm sorry," I repeated, forehead pressed against the steering wheel. I didn't have a choice. I considered calling Heather, but stopped myself. She had her own life, her own problems. She was planning a wedding, living with her fiancé Jake. The last text I'd received from her said they were having dinner with our parents to discuss wedding venues. She was still in their world, and I couldn't risk pulling her out of it. The car made a strange grinding noise when I started it. Ignoring it, I pulled onto the main road, just as the engine sputtered and died. Multiple warning lights flashed across the dashboard. Despite the recent repair, my car had given up. The tow truck would cost another $100 I didn't have. I called the mechanic, who unsympathetically informed me that the alternator had failed because of a deeper electrical system problem. Another $1,200 repair. "Leave it," I said flatly. "I can't afford to fix it." "Suit yourself. Storage is $25 per day." I hung up and looked at my surroundings. 3 miles from home, starting to rain, and completely alone. I began walking, the light drizzle turning to steady rain within minutes. By the time I reached my apartment building, I was soaked through, mascara streaking down my face, shivering uncontrollably. And there, taped to my door, was a bright orange notice. Eviction warning, rent past due 10 days. Full payment required within 48 hours to avoid eviction proceedings. I slid down against the door until I was sitting on the floor of the hallway, wet clothes pooling water around me. I didn't have the energy to cry anymore. I didn't have the energy for anything. That night, lying on my kitchen floor because somehow the cool tiles felt better than my bed, I sent a text to Heather. I don't think I can do this anymore. The pounding on my door startled me awake. I'd finally fallen asleep on the couch around 3 a.m., emotionally exhausted. My phone showed 4:27 a.m. The knocking continued, urgent and unrelenting. "Mackenzie, open up. It's me." Heather's voice. I stumbled to the door, fumbling with the locks. She stood there in pajama pants and a hoodie, hair pulled into a messy bun, eyes wide with panic. "Jesus, Mac, you can't send a text like that and then not answer your phone. I've been calling for an hour." Before I could respond, she pushed past me into the apartment, then turned and pulled me into a fierce hug. The sudden contact broke something inside me. I collapsed against her, sobbing with an intensity that frightened us both. "I'm here," she whispered, stroking my hair. "I'm right here." She guided me to the couch, keeping one arm around my shoulders as we sat. "Talk to me. What's happening?" The story poured out in fragmented pieces: the car, the eviction notice, the pawned bracelet, the job warning. Heather listened silently, her expression growing darker with each revelation. "Why didn't you call me?" she asked finally, voice thick with emotion. "I would have helped you. You're still talking to Mom and Dad. Planning your wedding. I didn't want to put you in the middle." "In the middle? Mac, you're my sister." Her voice cracked. "Did you really think I'd abandon you too?" The question hung between us. Truthfully, I hadn't known what to think. Everyone else had pulled away so easily. "I've been arguing with them for weeks," Heather continued, wiping at her eyes. "Ever since that text. Mom tried to convince me you'd apologize eventually. Dad said you'd learn your lesson once reality hit. I almost did, I admit it. Considered calling and agreeing to the investment just to end this nightmare." "Don't you dare," Heather said fiercely. "That project is failing, Mac. Dad's desperate. 3 investors pulled out last month. He wanted your money to show confidence to the others." "You knew this?" She nodded miserably. "Not at first. I believed him like you did. Then I overheard him arguing with his partner Gerald on the phone. That's when I started asking questions. Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried. I was going to warn you at Sunday dinner, but you stopped coming. Then when we texted, it felt too big to explain that way. I kept thinking I'd find the right moment." She squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry. I should have tried harder." We talked through the night. Heather confessed she'd initially sided with our parents out of habit. It's always been easier to agree with Dad. Then when he sent that text, something snapped. I told him it was cruel and unnecessary. He said I didn't understand the real world. Around 6 a.m., Heather got up and began cleaning my kitchen. I protested weakly, but she waved me off. "When's the last time you ate a real meal?" she asked, peering into my nearly empty refrigerator. I couldn't remember. She grabbed her keys. "I'm making a grocery run. Take a shower. You'll feel better." The hot water did help, washing away days of lethargy. When I emerged, Heather was unpacking bags of groceries. She'd also brought trash bags and cleaning supplies. "We're getting this place in order," she announced. "Then we're making a plan." By mid-morning, the apartment was transformed. Dishes washed, floors swept, laundry sorted. Heather cooked breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit, and watched intently as I ate every bite. "I've been thinking," she said as we finished. "Jake and I have that spare bedroom. It's just collecting boxes right now. You should move in with us while you figure things out." I couldn't impose like that. "It's not imposing. It's family taking care of family." Her expression hardened. "That's what family is supposed to do, regardless of what Mom and Dad think." "But your wedding planning, your life with Jake." "Jake agrees with me," she interrupted. "I called him while you were in the shower. He says you can stay as long as you need." I stared at her, overwhelmed by the lifeline she was extending. "Heather, if Mom and Dad find out." "Let them," she said defiantly. "I'm not letting my sister face eviction when we have a perfectly good spare room. If they have a problem with that, they'll have to deal with it." Later that afternoon, Jake arrived with his pickup truck. He hugged me warmly. "Cavalry's here," he said with a gentle smile. "Let's get you packed up." We loaded essential belongings, clothes, personal items, my laptop. Heather insisted on bringing my small collection of theater books. "Your dreams come too," she declared, carefully boxing them. As we prepared to leave, I stood in the center of the apartment, suddenly hesitant. "What if this doesn't get better?" I whispered. "What if this is it? I've lost my family for good." Heather took my hands in hers. "You haven't lost all your family. You still have me. And I'm not going anywhere. We promised, remember? Pinky swears under blanket forts. Always have each other's backs." That night, in Heather and Jake's spare bedroom, I slept deeply for the first time in weeks. The next morning, I awoke to coffee brewing and the sounds of normal life. Heather and Jake's quiet conversation, a shower running, keys jingling. When I emerged, Heather was at the kitchen table with a notepad. "I made a list," she announced. "Steps to get you back on track." The list was practical and thorough. Update resume, research temporary assistance programs, create payment plans for outstanding bills, look into public transportation options until the car situation was resolved. "And I want to loan you money for your grad school applications," she added. "That's non-negotiable." I started to protest, but she held up her hand. "Grandma would have wanted this." Consider it my way of honoring her too. Later, as Jake left for work, he squeezed my shoulder. "We'll get through this together," he said simply. "Family sticks together." That word, family, which had caused so much pain recently, suddenly felt different. Maybe family wasn't just who you were born to, but who chose to stand by you when it mattered most. That evening, Heather and I were sorting through old photos she'd rescued from my apartment when she suddenly laughed. "Remember when you convinced me that lightning bugs were actually fairies?" she asked. We spent that whole summer trying to catch one to make a wish. For the first time in weeks, I laughed too, a genuine, healing sound that seemed to lighten the air around us. "They are fairies," I insisted. "We just never caught one to prove it." As we giggled over shared childhood memories, I felt something I'd thought lost forever: hope. The first week living with Heather and Jake established a new rhythm. I woke early, made coffee for everyone, and left for work before they did. Returning to the theater with renewed focus, I threw myself into pending projects and stayed late to make up for my previous lapses. Janet noticed the change immediately. "Whatever was going on, I'm glad you're working through it," she said after I submitted the fall fundraising materials 2 days early. "This is the Mackenzie we hired." Heather insisted I see a therapist, even offering to cover the cost until my insurance situation improved. "You need professional support, not just sisterly cheerleading," she argued. Dr. Sarah Goldstein's office felt immediately comfortable: warm lighting, soft seating, and no pretension. Unlike the therapist my mother had briefly sent me to as a teenager, who reported everything back to her, Dr. Goldstein established our confidentiality boundaries clearly. "What brings you here, Mackenzie?" she asked during our first session. "My family disowned me over money," I said bluntly. "Except my sister." Over the following weeks, Dr. Goldstein helped me unpack decades of family dynamics. We worked through exercises that revealed patterns I'd never recognized: my father's conditional approval, my mother's enabling behavior, my own desperate attempts to earn love while maintaining independence. "What you're describing sounds like emotional manipulation," she explained during one particularly difficult session. "The expectation that family loyalty means sacrificing your autonomy isn't healthy." "But families help each other," I argued. Maybe I was selfish. "There's a difference between mutual support and coerced compliance," she countered. "Would you expect Heather to give you her inheritance if your situations were reversed?" "Of course not. It was her money to use as she needed." "Exactly. That standard should apply to you too." These insights were painful but illuminating. I began recognizing how often I'd compromised my needs to keep peace, how deeply I'd internalized my father's dismissal of my dreams. At work, my improved performance led to unexpected opportunities. When our marketing director took maternity leave, Janet asked me to temporarily manage some of her responsibilities. "It would mean a temporary raise," she added. "And if you do well, it could lead to a promotion when we restructure next year." The additional work brought me into contact with Stephanie Brooks, a senior designer I'd always admired from afar. We began collaborating on a special anniversary program, which required late evenings and working lunches. My parents wanted me to be a doctor, Stephanie confided during one such lunch. They didn't speak to me for 2 years when I went to art school instead. Now they proudly display my design awards in their living room. How did you get through those 2 years? I asked. Friends who became family. And stubborn determination to prove them wrong. She studied me carefully. Going through something similar. I hesitated, then shared a condensed version of my situation. Instead of the awkward sympathy I'd come to dread, Stephanie nodded with understanding. Come to dinner Friday, she said. My partner and I host a weekly gathering of what we call our chosen family friends who've become our support system. You might find it helpful. That dinner changed everything. Stephanie's apartment was filled with creative, interesting people who welcomed me immediately. Some shared similar stories of family estrangement, others simply offered friendship without prying. Through Stephanie, I developed a social circle completely separate from my family connections. We attended gallery openings, experimental theater productions, and weekend brunches. For the first time, I felt valued for exactly who I was, not who someone expected me to be. Meanwhile, Heather was on a mission of her own. 3 weeks after I moved in, she appeared at my bedroom door clutching her car keys. Get dressed. We're going on a mission. She drove us to the pawn shop where I'd sold my grandmother's bracelet. The same man stood behind the counter, barely glancing up as we entered. We're here for the silver bracelet with the sapphire charm, Heather announced, slapping cash on the counter. Sold about a month ago by my sister. He looked annoyed. That's not how this works. Items are held for 30 days, then go to general sale if the loan isn't repaid. Has it been sold yet? Heather demanded. No, but... Then name your price. After tense negotiation, we left with the bracelet, Heather paying nearly twice what I'd received for it. In the car, she fastened it around my wrist. Grandma would have hated knowing this was gone, she said softly. She believed in you more than anyone. The following weekend, we visited our grandmother's grave together. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching beneath our feet as we placed flowers against her headstone. I miss her wisdom, I admitted, tracing the engraved letters of her name. She always knew what to say. What do you think she'd tell you now? Heather asked. I considered this. Probably that family should lift you up, not tear you down. And that sometimes the hardest decisions are the right ones. Sounds exactly like her, Heather agreed, linking her arm through mine. That afternoon, I submitted my first graduate school application. 5 more followed over the next 2 weeks, programs in arts administration and theater management that would build on my experience while advancing my career. The process was both terrifying and exhilarating. 6 weeks after moving in with Heather and Jake, I found a small but affordable apartment closer to work. Though they insisted I could stay longer, I was ready for independence again. This time with a stronger foundation. The confrontation with my mother happened unexpectedly. I was examining tomatoes at the grocery store when I heard her voice behind me. Mackenzie. I turned slowly. She looked thinner, her normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled. For a moment, we just stared at each other. How are you? She finally asked, her tone formal. I'm doing well, I replied truthfully. Working. Applied to graduate programs. Your father would say that's throwing good money after bad. The familiar criticism stung, but differently now. It's my money and my future. I get to decide what's worth investing in. Her expression hardened. You've always been stubborn. Just like him. Is that why you're here? To tell me I'm stubborn? I saw you across the store. Thought I should check if you're managing. The implication that I couldn't survive without them ignited something in me. I'm more than managing. I'm thriving. No thanks to either of you. We were trying to teach you responsibility. By cutting me off completely? That's not teaching, Mom. That's punishment for not doing exactly what Dad wanted. Family businesses require family loyalty, she insisted, but her voice wavered slightly. Family relationships should require unconditional love, I countered. Not financial obedience. She glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with the conversation. Heather tells me you're staying with them. I was. I have my own place now. Something flashed across her face, surprise, perhaps even disappointment that I hadn't failed as they'd expected. She adjusted her purse strap nervously. Your father's business partner, Gerald, left the company. Things have been difficult. The revelation didn't surprise me. I'm sorry to hear that. Yes, well. She paused awkwardly. I should go. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Mom? I'm still your daughter. That hasn't changed, even if your treatment of me has. She didn't respond, continuing down the aisle without looking back. Later that evening, Heather confirmed what I'd suspected from my mother's comments. Dad's business is in serious trouble, she said during our weekly dinner. Gerald pulled out completely and took 3 major investors with him. The Cambridge project is effectively dead. So Dad's desperate ploy for my inheritance was a last-ditch effort to save a sinking ship. Heather sighed. They've been lying to everyone about the company's financial situation. I only know because Jake's cousin works at the bank that's calling in their loans. The knowledge that my father had tried to use my inheritance to bail out his failing business should have been vindicating. Instead, it left me with a complicated sadness. Not regret for protecting myself, but grief for what our relationship could have been if honesty and respect had existed between us. Do you think they'll ever admit they were wrong? I asked. Heather's expression was gentle but realistic. Dad? Probably not. Mom? Maybe someday. But Mac, your healing can't depend on their apology. It has to come from within you. As autumn progressed, my rebuilt life gained momentum. The temporary promotion became permanent when the marketing director decided to extend her leave. Stephanie introduced me to a director who needed help with grant writing, providing additional freelance income. And most surprisingly, I began dating again. Nathan Reed appeared in my life unexpectedly, a friend of Jake's who joined us for a game night. Tall with kind eyes and a quiet confidence, he asked thoughtful questions and actually listened to the answers. When he asked for my number at the end of the evening, I hesitated only briefly. I should warn you, I said on our first date at the art museum, I'm in the middle of some complicated family drama. Who isn't? He replied with a gentle smile. My parents divorced when I was 12. 10 years of holidays split between warring factions gave me a PhD in family complications. His understanding created space for honesty between us. Over dinners and long walks, I shared my story piece by piece. Nathan never judged or offered simplistic advice, just listened and supported. Family is who shows up, he said one evening as we sat on a park bench watching the sunset. Sometimes that's blood relatives. Sometimes it's the people we choose. Either way, it's about who stands with you when it matters. When my first graduate school acceptance arrived, complete with scholarship offer, Nathan brought champagne to celebrate. Heather and Jake hosted a small dinner party with Stephanie and other friends. To new beginnings, Jake toasted, raising his glass. And to the family we choose. Looking around at these people who had supported me through my darkest moments, I felt a profound gratitude. My parents' rejection had broken me open, but in that breaking, I discovered strengths I never knew I possessed and connections more authentic than anything I'd known before. Nathan and I developed our relationship gradually. After our museum date, we moved through the traditional progression, dinner at a small Italian restaurant where he told me about growing up in Seattle, a Saturday afternoon hike where I shared stories about my theater experiences, a documentary film followed by hours of conversation at a late-night cafe. I approached our connection cautiously. The family rejection had left me questioning my judgment, wondering if I could trust my own feelings. I'm not in a rush, Nathan assured me after our 4th date, when he sensed my hesitation about deepening our relationship. I like spending time with you. That's enough for now. His patience created safety. There was no pressure, no agenda, just genuine interest and growing affection. When he finally kissed me goodnight after a concert in the park, it felt like a natural progression rather than a calculated move. I think I'm falling for you, he admitted 2 months into dating. But I want you to know I understand you're rebuilding your life. I'm willing to move at whatever pace feels right. His understanding stemmed from personal experience. Over dinner one evening, he shared his own family complexities. My mother remarried 3 times after divorcing my father, he explained. Each stepfather had different ideas about raising me. By 16, I'd lived under 5 distinct sets of family rules. It was exhausting. How did you handle it? I asked. Badly at first. I acted out, got in trouble at school. Then I realized I was only hurting myself. He paused, absently turning his water glass. I started creating my own internal compass instead of trying to please everyone else. Best decision I ever made. This resonated deeply. I was learning to trust my own decisions rather than measuring them against my father's approval. Our relationship strengthened my rebuilding process rather than distracting from it. Nathan celebrated each of my steps forward. The promotion at work, the graduate school applications, my growing financial independence. When I found an affordable apartment closer to the theater, he volunteered to help move furniture and hang shelves. What do you think? I asked nervously after arranging the living room of my new place. It was small but had character, exposed brick wall, tall windows, hardwood floors. It feels like you, he said, noticing the theater posters I'd carefully framed, the colorful throw pillows, the bookshelf organized by play genres. Creative, thoughtful, and authentic. His observation crystallized something I hadn't fully acknowledged. I was creating spaces, both physical and emotional, that truly reflected me, not the person my parents had expected me to be. Meanwhile, my professional life flourished with newfound confidence. The temporary promotion became permanent when our marketing director decided to move across the country. Janet called me into her office with the news. The board unanimously approved promoting you to marketing director, she announced. Your work during the interim period impressed everyone, especially the fundraising campaign. The salary increase meant I could finally breathe financially. I established a savings account, began systematically paying down my credit card debt, and created a realistic budget for graduate school expenses. When the first acceptance letter arrived from a prestigious program offering a partial scholarship, I stared at it in disbelief. 2 more acceptances followed, including my top choice, a specialized arts administration program with evening and weekend classes that would allow me to continue working. Nathan organized a surprise celebration dinner with Heather, Jake, Stephanie, and other friends who had supported me. As we shared wine and conversation, I looked around the table with overwhelming gratitude. These people had become my chosen family, supporting my dreams without conditions. A toast, Stephanie announced, raising her glass. To Mackenzie, who reminded all of us that it's never too late to choose your own path. Later that night, walking home with Nathan under a canopy of stars, I felt a quiet certainty about the direction of my life. I'm proud of you, he said, squeezing my hand. You've rebuilt everything from scratch in less than a year. Not from scratch, I corrected. I had help. You, Heather, everyone. Yes, but you did the hardest part. You chose to keep going when it would have been easier to give up. The approaching holiday season brought new challenges. Thanksgiving would be the first major holiday without my parents. Heather called me one evening in early November, her voice tentative. Mom called about Thanksgiving, she began. They're expecting us at the house, like always. My stomach tightened. Both of us. Her silence answered my question. It's okay, I said quickly. You should go. They're still your parents. It's not okay, she countered. I told Mom I wouldn't come without you. Heather, don't put yourself in that position. It's already done. Jake and I are hosting Thanksgiving this year. You, Nathan, some friends from work. A fresh start with new traditions. That Thanksgiving became a beautiful reinvention. 10 of us gathered around Heather and Jake's extended dining table, a mismatched collection of friends, coworkers, and neighbors. Everyone brought something: Nathan's homemade cranberry sauce, Stephanie's roasted vegetables, my apple pies. No formal dress code, no rigid seating arrangement, no tension-filled silences. Just genuine connection, spontaneous laughter, and the warm embrace of chosen family. As we lingered over dessert, Jake proposed an impromptu tradition, each person sharing something they were building in their lives. Careers, relationships, creative projects, the answers varied widely but carried a common thread of intentional growth. When my turn came, I said simply, I'm building a life that feels authentic, surrounded by people who accept me as I am. The murmurs of approval around the table confirmed I wasn't alone in valuing this. Later that evening, Heather showed me a text from our mother. "We missed you today." The house felt empty. No mention of me, no acknowledgement of why Heather hadn't attended, but perhaps a small crack in the wall of silence. December brought another unexpected development. Nathan's lease was ending, and we'd been spending most nights together anyway, either at his place or mine. "What would you think about moving in together?" he asked one evening as we washed dishes side by side. "My place is too small, but yours could work for both of us. Or we could find somewhere new." The old Mackenzie would have panicked at such a significant step. The new Mackenzie considered it thoughtfully. "I'd like that," I decided. "But let's find a new place together. Something that's ours from the beginning." We found a 2-bedroom apartment with a small office space that could double as a guest room. The process of combining our possessions, choosing new items together, and creating shared spaces deepened our relationship in unexpected ways. "I never thought I'd be excited about buying a coffee table," Nathan laughed as we assembled our latest purchase. "But knowing it's for our home makes it different." Our home. The phrase resonated deeply. As Christmas approached, I experienced moments of profound sadness mixed with my new happiness. Family traditions, decorating the tree, my mother's special eggnog, the Christmas Eve dinner, had been constants throughout my life. Their absence created a dull ache beneath the surface. Nathan found me one evening staring at our small Christmas tree, tears sliding silently down my face. "I miss certain parts of them," I admitted when he asked what was wrong. "Not the control or the conditions, but the familiar rituals. The history." He held me while I cried, neither minimizing my grief nor suggesting I should reconcile on their terms. The following day, my father called. Seeing his name on my phone screen after months of silence made my heart race. "Mackenzie." His voice sounded older, strained. "We need to talk." "I'm listening," I said carefully. "The business. There have been complications. The Cambridge project didn't proceed as expected." His carefully worded explanation avoided any admission of failure. "I've been considering restructuring options, and it occurred to me that your inheritance might still be available for investment. On more favorable terms, of course." The familiar pressure tactic, thinly disguised as reconciliation. 6 months earlier, I might have wavered, might have seen this as my only path back to family connection. "I'm sorry about the business," I said sincerely. "But my inheritance is committed elsewhere. I'm starting graduate school in January." Silence, then. Still pursuing that theater nonsense? "Arts administration and management. I've been promoted to marketing director at the theater company, and this degree will help me advance further." "I see." His tone chilled. "Well, I thought I'd offer the opportunity. Clearly, you're still making the same mistakes." "They're not mistakes, Dad. They're choices. My choices. And they're working out well for me." After we hung up, I sat in stunned reflection. The conversation had triggered none of the desperate need for approval I'd felt for most of my life. I'd spoken my truth calmly, without anger or defensiveness. Progress, not perfection. I called Heather immediately to tell her about the conversation. "He's scrambling," she confirmed. "Jake's cousin says the bank is foreclosing on 2 properties next month. They'll have to downsize significantly. Do you think they'll be okay?" Despite everything, I worried about their welfare. Financially? They'll survive, just with a much smaller lifestyle. Emotionally? That depends on whether Dad can accept his new reality. That evening, as Nathan and I finalized plans for Christmas Day with friends, I realized something profound. The family fracture that had once seemed world-ending had actually created space for authentic connection and personal growth. The painful breaking had enabled a more honest rebuilding. "You know what's strange?" I said to Nathan as we hung stockings on our small mantel. 6 months ago, I thought losing my family was the worst thing that could happen to me. Now I realize it forced me to discover who I really am when I'm not trying to earn their approval. He kissed my forehead gently. Sometimes the hardest losses create the most important growth. As we prepared to welcome the new year, I looked toward the future with quiet confidence. Graduate school would begin in January. My relationship with Nathan continued to deepen. My friendship circle expanded through work and social connections. Most importantly, I'd learned to trust myself, my judgments, my values, my capacity for resilience. The inheritance that had triggered such family upheaval was now allocated for tuition and living expenses during graduate studies. Every time I made a payment, I silently thanked my grandmother for her final gift, not just financial support, but the catalyst for profound personal transformation. Heather's wedding plans accelerated after the new year. What had begun as a relatively simple celebration grew more elaborate as our mother's involvement increased. The venue changed from a rustic barn to a country club. The guest list expanded. The budget doubled. Mom's taking over, Heather confessed during one of our regular coffee dates. I wanted something intimate, but she keeps talking about family connections and business associates who must be invited. Is that what you and Jake want? I asked carefully. She sighed, stirring her latte absently. Jake's being supportive either way. He says the marriage matters more than the wedding. But honestly, no. It's becoming something that feels like a performance rather than a celebration. The elephant in the room remained unaddressed, my invitation status. 3 months before the wedding date, Heather finally broached the subject. I need you to know that you're my maid of honor, she stated firmly. Non-negotiable. Have you discussed this with Mom and Dad? I asked, already knowing the answer from her determined expression. Not yet, but I will. This week. She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. You're my sister. My best friend. There's no way I'm getting married without you standing beside me. The conversation with our parents apparently went as poorly as expected. Heather called me afterward, voice tight with controlled anger. Dad says he won't attend if you're there. Mom cried about difficult positions and choosing sides. Her frustration vibrated through the phone, as if asking them to be civil to their own daughter for one day is some unreasonable demand. Heather, maybe I should just... Don't you dare suggest skipping my wedding, she interrupted fiercely. This is exactly what they want, to make me choose between you and them. Well, they're underestimating how stubborn I can be. I felt simultaneously grateful for her loyalty and guilty for causing family strife. I don't want your wedding day ruined by drama. The only ones creating drama are them. Her voice softened slightly. Remember when we were kids and promised to be each other's maids of honor? That promise still stands. The following weeks brought increased tension. My parents apparently enlisted extended family to pressure Heather, suggesting compromises like having me attend as a regular guest rather than in the bridal party, or seating me at a distant table from family. Jake's unwavering support became Heather's anchor. My family adores you, he assured her. And honestly, if your parents can't accept your sister, that says more about them than about either of you. Meanwhile, I threw myself into maid of honor duties, organizing a bachelorette weekend that balanced fun with Heather's actual preferences, helping address invitations, accompanying her to final dress fittings. During one such fitting, as Heather stood on a pedestal surrounded by mirrors in a stunning ivory gown, our eyes met in the reflection. Thank you for standing by me, I said quietly. Through everything. You would have done the same, she replied with certainty. I hope so. I want to be as brave as you. She turned from the mirror to face me directly. Mac, refusing to invest in Dad's failing business, wasn't just smart, it was brave. Standing on your own when everyone pressured you to fold? That took courage I'm not sure I would have had. Her words settled something within me, a lingering doubt about whether I'd done the right thing. Looking at my sister, radiant in her wedding dress and fierce in her loyalty, I knew we'd both found strength we hadn't known we possessed. The wedding rehearsal dinner, hosted by Jake's parents at an upscale restaurant, became the first major hurdle. My parents would be there, and despite Heather's assurances that they had promised to be civil, my anxiety mounted as the evening approached. Nathan squeezed my hand as we walked into the restaurant. Remember, you've done nothing wrong. Hold your head high. My mother saw me first. Her expression flickered between recognition and discomfort before settling into a tight smile. My father, engaged in conversation with Jake's father, stiffened visibly when he noticed my arrival, but didn't acknowledge me directly. The seating arrangement, obviously designed to minimize potential conflict, placed me and Nathan at the opposite end of the long table from my parents. Heather, however, made a point of circulating during the meal, ensuring she spent equal time with all guests. When she stopped by our seats, I whispered, "Are you okay?" "Better than expected," she replied with a determined smile. "Dad's being icily polite, which is all I asked for." The evening progressed without direct confrontation. My parents maintained distant courtesy, speaking to me only when absolutely necessary and with minimal words. Other relatives, taking cues from this behavior, were similarly reserved, though Jake's family made gracious efforts to include Nathan and me in conversations. As we left the restaurant, my mother approached briefly. "Your dress is lovely," she said, her first direct comment to me all evening. "The color suits you." Before I could respond beyond a surprised "thank you," she had moved away to join my father at the valet stand. "Progress?" Nathan questioned as we drove home. "Microscopic," I replied. "But yes, I suppose it is." The wedding day dawned bright and clear. As part of the bridal party, I arrived at the country club early for hair and makeup preparations. The bridal suite buzzed with activity, Heather's friends from college, Jake's sister, and me. My mother appeared at the doorway 2 hours before the ceremony. Her eyes swept the room before landing on Heather. "The florist needs approval on the ceremony arrangements," she announced, then added with obvious effort, "You look beautiful, dear." As she turned to leave, Heather called out, "Mom, can you help me with my necklace?" Mackenzie's hands are full with the veil. A deliberate strategy, I realized, creating a moment where our mother had to acknowledge my presence in a positive context. After a barely perceptible hesitation, she approached, carefully taking the pearl necklace from Heather's hands. As she worked the clasp, her fingers briefly brushed my hands holding the veil. Our eyes met in the mirror, and something unspoken passed between us, not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the first hint of possibility. The ceremony itself was beautifully executed. Standing beside Heather as she exchanged vows with Jake, I felt overwhelmingly proud of the woman my sister had become, strong enough to insist on authentic happiness, brave enough to stand firm against pressure. My father performed his ceremonial role of walking Heather down the aisle with dignified formality, his expression softening only when he placed her hand in Jake's. Throughout the ceremony, he kept his gaze focused entirely on Heather or the officiant, never once looking in my direction. The reception presented new challenges. As maid of honor, I would give a toast, a moment where all attention would focus on me. I'd spent weeks crafting and practicing my speech, determined to honor Heather and Jake without creating additional tension. When the moment arrived, I approached the microphone with outward calm belied by my racing heart. My father stared stonily at his plate. My mother watched with guarded expression. "When we were little girls," I began, "Heather and I made a pact. We promised we would always be there for each other's most important moments." Through childhood adventures, teenage dramas, and adult challenges, that promise has remained unbroken. I shared stories of Heather's kindness, her determination, her capacity for love. I spoke about witnessing her relationship with Jake develop and strengthen. Carefully avoiding any references to family conflict, I instead emphasized the future they were building together. To Heather and Jake, I concluded, raising my glass. May you always face life's joys and challenges together, supporting each other's dreams and standing firm in your commitment. I love you both. Applause filled the room as Heather embraced me, whispering, "Perfect. Absolutely perfect." The dinner service proceeded without incident. After the meal, several relatives who had maintained distance at the rehearsal dinner approached me with warmer greetings. My Aunt Susan hugged me tightly. "We've missed you at family gatherings," she said quietly. "Whatever happened with Richard and Diana shouldn't extend to the rest of us." My cousin Michael mentioned an upcoming birthday celebration. "You should come. Bring Nathan. We'd love to see you both." These small reconnections felt like tender shoots pushing through frozen ground, fragile but hopeful. My father left the reception immediately after the father-daughter dance, citing business commitments. My mother stayed longer but maintained her distance, speaking with me only once to comment that the centerpieces had turned out nicely. Near the end of the evening, as guests began departing, Heather pulled me into the bridal suite for a moment of privacy. "You okay?" she asked, searching my face. "Shouldn't I be asking you that? It's your wedding day." which has been perfect. She kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief. But I saw how Dad avoided you completely. And Mom's barely thought approach. I expected worse, I admitted. At least there were no public confrontations. I'm still angry with them, she confessed. Dad especially. But today's not about that. Today, I just want to thank you. For what? For being brave enough to stand up to them last year. Watching you refuse to be manipulated made me realize I needed to set my own boundaries too. She squeezed my hands. You changed things for both of us, Mac. For the better. As the reception wound down, Nathan and I helped gather Heather and Jake's gifts. My mother approached, looking tired but composed. Heather mentioned you're starting graduate school, she said, the statement somewhere between question and acknowledgement. Yes, classes began last month. Arts administration and management. She nodded slowly. Your speech was very nice. Thank you. I paused, then added, the wedding was beautiful. You and Heather did an amazing job planning everything. A flicker of something pride, perhaps, crossed her face. She knew what she wanted. Strong-minded, like. She stopped herself before completing the comparison to me. Like all the Wilson women, I finished for her, offering a small olive branch. Her lips curved in the barest smile before she turned away to direct the catering staff. Later, as Nathan drove us home, I reflected on the day's subtle shifts. No dramatic reconciliations had occurred, but small cracks had appeared in the wall of family estrangement. Whether these would widen into genuine openings remained uncertain, but the possibility now existed where before there had been only solid rejection. You were amazing today, Nathan said, reaching for my hand across the console. Gracious despite everything. I did it for Heather, I replied. Then, reconsidering, added, and for myself. To show I could rise above the hurt and be the bigger person. That night, scrolling through candid reception photos Heather's friend had already posted, I paused on one that caught my breath. A rare moment when my mother and I were both in frame, our profiles similar, both smiling at something off camera. The family resemblance was unmistakable, as was the invisible gulf between us. I sent the image to Heather with the message, maybe someday. Her reply came minutes later, I believe it. One step at a time. 1 year after my father's devastating text message, my life had transformed in ways I never could have predicted. The graduate program in arts administration challenged and fulfilled me intellectually. My position as marketing director had expanded to include development work, connecting with donors and foundations to secure the theater's financial future. Nathan and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm in our shared apartment. His software engineering career was thriving, and we'd found a balance between our different work schedules and creative pursuits. On weekends, we explored the city together, discovering hidden bookstores and quirky cafes, building the kind of partnership I'd never witnessed in my parents' marriage, equal, respectful, and genuinely supportive. Heather called one spring morning, her voice bubbling with excitement. Can you come over this afternoon? We have news. I found her and Jake waiting with matching grins and a small gift bag. Inside was a tiny onesie with Future Theater Kid printed across the front. You're pregnant. I squealed, hugging them both. When? How far along? 12 weeks, Heather confirmed, beaming. Due in October. And she exchanged glances with Jake. We want you to be the baby's godmother. The request overwhelmed me. Are you sure? With everything that's happened with Mom and Dad. That's exactly why we're sure, Jake interrupted gently. You've shown what it means to love unconditionally and stand by family when it matters most. Tears filled my eyes as I accepted, understanding the depth of trust they were placing in me. Have you told Mom and Dad? I asked. Yesterday, Heather confirmed. Mom cried. Dad actually smiled, first time I've seen that in months. They're cautiously excited. And what about? I hesitated. You. She finished my unspoken question. I made it clear you'll be central in the baby's life. Mom seemed to accept it. Dad changed the subject. Since the wedding 6 months earlier, the family situation had evolved in small increments. My mother occasionally sent text messages, impersonal at first, saw your theater mentioned in the newspaper, gradually becoming slightly warmer. Hope you're staying healthy with this flu season. My father maintained his distance, though Heather reported he sometimes asked about my work or studies in roundabout ways, never directly acknowledging his interest. The baby news created a new dimension. This child would be their first grandchild, my niece or nephew, a continuation of family regardless of current fractures. The prospect stirred complicated emotions, hope that the baby might become a bridge for healing, fear that old patterns would simply transfer to a new generation. 2 weeks after Heather's announcement, my mother called, her first direct contact in over a year. Heather mentioned you have some of your childhood keepsakes in storage. She began without preamble. We're cleaning out the attic, and there are more things you might want for your apartment. Or for the baby someday. The thinly veiled olive branch surprised me. That would be nice. Thank you. If you want to come by next Saturday afternoon, your father will be golfing. The implicit message was clear. She was creating a safe opportunity for reconnection without him. That Saturday, I drove to my childhood home with nervous anticipation. The house looked smaller somehow, the imposing colonial presence diminished in my newly independent eyes. My mother opened the door before I could ring the bell. "Mackenzie," she acknowledged, stepping back to let me enter. "You look well." "Thank you." "So do you." An awkward silence stretched between us as I stood in the foyer, suddenly feeling like a visitor in the home where I'd grown up. "I've set everything out in the dining room," she finally said, leading the way. The large table was covered with neatly organized piles. Photo albums, school projects, childhood stuffed animals, theater programs from high school and college performances. My heart constricted at the sight of so many memories. "I didn't realize you'd kept all this," I said softly, picking up a faded construction paper card I'd made in 2nd grade. "Of course I did." Something in her tone made me look up. Her expression held a complicated mixture of emotions. "You're still my daughter, Mackenzie. That never changed." The simple statement cracked something open between us. Not forgiveness exactly, too much remained unaddressed, but acknowledgement of our fundamental connection despite everything. We spent the next 2 hours sorting through my belongings, each item triggering memories that we cautiously shared. My mother seemed to relax gradually, even laughing when we found an embarrassing middle school diary. "You were so dramatic about everything," she remarked, then caught herself. "I suppose that served you well in your theater career." It did, I agreed, recognizing the small concession in her comment. As we worked, she hesitantly offered updates on extended family and old neighbors. I shared selective details about graduate school and the theater, carefully avoiding any mention of finances or independence that might trigger old tensions. When we'd finished sorting, she surprised me by offering coffee. Sitting across from each other at the kitchen table, a space that had witnessed countless family dynamics over the years, felt surreal. "Your father isn't adjusting well to the business changes," she said eventually, staring into her mug. "The downtown office has been sold. He's operating from home now, with just 2 employees." I nodded, unsure how to respond. His pride was severely damaged. She looked up. "That's not an excuse for how he treated you. Just context." "I understand pride," I said carefully. "But family shouldn't be conditional." "No," she agreed quietly. "It shouldn't." As I prepared to leave, boxes of memories loaded in my car, she handed me a small velvet pouch. "This was your grandmother's. She wanted you to have it when you finished your education." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with theater mask charms, comedy and tragedy intertwined. My throat tightened with emotion. "Thank you for keeping it for me." She nodded, then added hesitantly, "Perhaps we could have lunch sometime. If you're interested." "I'd like that," I replied, meaning it despite the lingering caution in my heart. Driving away, I realized I felt neither the desperate need for reconciliation that had once consumed me nor the angry rejection I'd later embraced. Instead, I felt something more nuanced, a mature recognition that family relationships could evolve without returning to old patterns, that boundaries could coexist with connection. When I arrived home, my father's car was in our driveway. Nathan stood on the porch, his expression concerned. "He just showed up," Nathan explained quietly. "Insisted on waiting to speak with you. I can ask him to leave if you're not up for this." No, I decided after a moment's consideration. It's time we talked. My father sat stiffly in our living room, looking out of place among our eclectic furnishings. He stood when I entered, his posture formal. Mackenzie. Dad. This is unexpected. Your mother mentioned you were collecting your things today. He cleared his throat. I thought we might speak directly. Man to man. The outdated phrase nearly made me smile despite the tension. Woman to man. But yes, we should talk. His discomfort was palpable as he glanced around our apartment, taking in the theater posters, books, and photographs that reflected my life now. His gaze paused on a framed certificate from my first semester of graduate school, Dean's List recognition. Your mother says you're doing well in your studies. Top of my class, I confirmed without apology. He nodded stiffly. The Cambridge project failed completely. Gerald took the remaining investors with him when he left. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? His tone sharpened briefly before he visibly reined himself in. No, I suppose that's fair. You saw the problems before I admitted them. The closest thing to acknowledgement I'd ever heard from him. Business cycles happen, I offered neutrally. You built something successful once. You have that knowledge. At 63, starting over isn't quite so simple. He straightened his shoulders. But that's not why I'm here. Heather's news. A grandchild changes perspectives. It does, I agreed cautiously. I won't pretend to understand or approve of all your choices, he continued. The theater career, the education path, the financial decisions. He stumbled slightly over the reference to my inheritance. But you're Heather's sister. The child's aunt. That connection remains regardless of our differences. Not quite an olive branch, but perhaps the shadow of one. I appreciate you saying that, I replied carefully. Family connections matter to me too. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. Nathan appeared in the doorway, offering coffee, which my father declined. I should go, he said, standing abruptly. I've said what I came to say. At the door, I found myself speaking from a place of new strength. Dad? I don't need your approval anymore, but I'll always be your daughter. That's a fact, not a negotiation. He paused, his back to me, then nodded once before walking to his car. Nathan wrapped his arms around me as we watched my father drive away. You okay? Actually, yes, I realized, somewhat surprised. For the first time, I spoke to him as an equal, not as a daughter desperate for approval. That evening, reviewing the day's events, I experienced a profound sense of closure. Not because all wounds had healed, many remained tender, but because I'd reclaimed the narrative of my own life. My worth was no longer determined by my father's approval or my mother's acceptance. Sitting on our small balcony with Nathan, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in gold and purple, I reflected on the journey of the past year. When Dad sent that text, I thought my world was ending, I admitted. I couldn't imagine surviving without my family support. Now I realize losing what I thought I needed created space to discover what I actually deserved. 3 months later, Heather's baby shower became a milestone in our evolving family dynamics. My mother had taken charge of planning, and to my surprise, my name appeared on the invitation as co-host. The event would be held at my parents' house, the first time I'd been officially invited back since the estrangement. When I arrived early to help set up, my mother greeted me with an awkward but genuine hug. The decorations you sent over are lovely, she commented, gesturing to the gender-neutral woodland theme Heather had chosen. Working alongside her preparing food and arranging gifts felt like navigating unfamiliar terrain, familiar actions in a relationship fundamentally altered. My father made himself scarce until guests began arriving, then maintained polite distance throughout the event. The most meaningful moment came when Heather opened our joint gift, a handcrafted wooden bookcase filled with children's books, each inscribed with a personal message from family members. This one's from Aunt Mackenzie, Heather announced, holding up a colorful storybook about a little girl who dreams of being a theater director. My mother leaned over to see the inscription I'd written, "To my precious niece or nephew, dream big, stand strong, and know you are loved exactly as you are." Our eyes met briefly, and something unspoken passed between us, recognition of the lessons learned, the growth still happening, the shared love for this coming child who would never know the family rifts that preceded their arrival. After the shower, as I helped clean up, my father approached with uncharacteristic hesitancy. The bookcase was thoughtful, he said. Did Nathan build it? We designed it together, I replied. He did the woodwork. I did the finishing and shelving. He nodded, seeming to search for words. You've built a good life, Mackenzie. Different than I would have chosen for you, but it suits you. Coming from him, it was monumental. Later that evening, sitting in our apartment with Nathan, I called Heather to thank her for including me so prominently in her celebration. Thank you for standing by me when no one else would, I told her. You changed everything, you know. We changed things together, she corrected. By being brave enough to define family on our own terms. Her words crystallized the most profound lesson of my journey. Family isn't simply a matter of blood or obligation. It's a choice we make daily to support, to respect, to love authentically without conditions. This story began with rejection that felt like an ending but transformed into a beginning. A text message intended to punish instead launched me toward genuine independence and deeper connections. The family I have now, partly born, partly chosen, is stronger because it's built on truth rather than expectation. Have you ever experienced a painful rejection that ultimately led to unexpected growth? Or stood by someone when others walked away? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experiences might help others facing similar challenges know they're not alone. Don't forget to subscribe if family journey stories resonate with you, and like this video if you found meaning in my path from rejection to rebuilding. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the people who hurt us create the opportunity for us to discover our own strength.